Welcome to Unscripted Coding. Today we're going to play around with GPT-4 Vision again, and what we're going to do is make read aloud or text-to-speech even better. So let me explain what the idea is here. GPT-4 Vision is an AI large language model. It can take images that you input and output text. Now, OpenAI does this classic example in which it takes photos of the insides of your refrigerator. There might be some veggies, carrots, there might be a bit of leftover meat, some rice, whatever is in your fridge. And you can start asking the AI, here's a picture of my fridge, here are the contents, what can I make for dinner tonight? What can I make for lunch? What can I do to use the ingredients in the refrigerator? So the model is able to understand what is inside the image and describe it accurately and make use of what it finds out. And so in our case, we're going to do something a lot simpler. We're seeing images in the middle of articles, blog posts, websites, and we're trying to replace the images with text. Why are we doing this? Well, if I start asking it to read aloud, whatever app you're using is just going to start reading down this list, blah, 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 blah. And when it hits an image, usually it just skips over. So it will pretend like this image doesn't exist. It might read this section here. Now, on Wikipedia, that is okay, because you can see there's a very brief description of these images below. And so in this case, fragment of Ramses VI stone sarcophagus from his tomb, now on display at the British Museum. That is a fantastic description. You get a good sense of what you're missing out in the image. But if we take a look at another example here, this is the New York Times. Over here, this is a graph. And what we're seeing is there is a caption here, and it says, source, Santa data from Gig Salad. Should probably zoom in a little bit here. But that is not... Sorry about that. That's not very helpful for somebody who's not looking at the image. And so in my case, if I'm listening and I'm looking away, maybe doing dishes, and just listening to the article, I'm going to miss the valuable information in this graph. So if we are able to take GPT Vision and parse through this web page and take all of the images and put a very descriptive a piece of text replacing it, we might be able to recreate and make something really useful. So as I start listening to more and more articles, just audio-wise, I'm finding some are great. As I said, Wikipedia is a great example of something you could straight up listen to and get all the major pieces. But if you start looking at academic papers, if you start looking at scholarly articles, even some of these New York Times articles, you're going to see graphs, tables, you're going to see charts that are skipped entirely but have a lot of information embedded. Now, I've tested this idea a little bit. I know that GPT Vision is able to describe what is happening in the graph, but that's with really targeted prompts. It's going to be difficult to see whether there is a general prompt that we could apply to all images, because there's very valuable information in this graph, but in this particular image of Santa Claus, Santa Claus, there's not a whole lot. Like if I skip this while I'm listening to the text, not a big deal. But if I skipped this image, I could lose a big chunk of the text. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to show you guys, because I realize not a lot of people do this, but if you are using Microsoft Edge, you can very quickly ask it to read any web page, even some PDFs and other files. And all you have to do is right-click and click Read Aloud.
Santa's wages. How does Santa's wage growth compare with other jobs? Share full article. 425. By the Learning Network. Note, we'll publish our next graph on January 4th to discuss with live moderation on Wednesday, January 10th, 2024.
Okay, so we've seen this before in other videos because I am really obsessed with trying to be able to push all my content for me to listen to, because I learn very well through audio. It's not perfect. This is, free kind of option. If you run it through 11 Labs or some of the more advanced text-to-speech, you're going to have even more lifelike voices, but this is just fine. This is a proof of concept. So, what are we going to do? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to copy this curl example here. And this is just a plain send to GPT-4 Vision. This is just a straight API example. It already specified a URL to an image, and that's all it's doing. So obviously we haven't gotten the code of replacing each of these images. Now, I have been absolutely loving using ChatGPT to start helping me write code. So I am just pasting this curl command and asking it to change it into plain JavaScript. And so here I have this. And so I also have a blank page for us to paste in. So I figured out we're doing JavaScript. Last missing piece here is my API key, which I am pasting in here, but don't get your hopes up because I will replace it and delete it. So this is not a functional API key by the time you're seeing this. Okay, so we're running this fetch, and it's going to put a header. It's going to put in the body, what model we're using, and well, we'll revisit this in a sec. But what we should be doing, what we should be doing is creating a single prompt here, and we are also going to make this URL a variable that we can pass in. So we probably want a function API call, and we will have URL as the input. In this case, we get a response. I would like to see what the response looks like. Oh, no, that is not what we're looking for. I wanted to take a look at this one. Okay. You know what? I'm just going to ask ChatGPT to do it. Can you return the response, which is only the next chat message? I don't care about the rest of the response. Normally when you make a call to OpenAI, they have a bunch of things in the response, like how many tokens it's used, what other pieces in the response. In this case, you can see that it has now put out data choices 0 message. So it got a data response back. It's going to look at choices and then the first in the chat choices and then the message in the choices. So I'm saying skip all the rest of the stuff. I don't really care. And over here, we'll just replace it like this. And in this case, I want to return. And I think that's fine. RL, and I am, so let's work on the prompt real quick. I am summarizing an article and this image appears in the middle. Can you describe I am summarizing an article. No, I am converting an article into audio and this image appears in the middle. Can you describe what the image is in sufficient detail so that a reader or listener is able to understand the image without seeing it? And then hopefully it responds back with something useful. Okay, so I am going to throw this right back into ChatGPT and say, I have this function. Basically, I want to go through all the image tags in an element and run the source image through this API call, then replace the image tag with a p tag containing the response. Can you help me write the function? If you aren't using ChatGPT to start coding, you really should. It offloads so much of your thinking. Anyways, this is going a little slower than I hoped, so I'm gonna go off audio and come back after I get to the final output. Okay, so we're back. I'm just going to close off the developer tools, and you can see that what has happened is we have replaced this graph with this good description. The graph is titled Average Wage Growth since 2015, shows a percentage increase in the average wages for various sectors, blah, 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 blah. I realize maybe this is good time.
This graph is titled Average Wage Growth since 2015 and shows the percentage increase in average wages for various sectors, including a humorous representation of Santa as a job category. The vertical axis represents the percentage growth in wages from plus 10% to plus 40%, and the horizontal axis represents the years from 2015 to 2022. Each line represents a different sector, with Santa in red showing a significantly higher wage growth compared to other categories. The graph indicates that the average wage for individuals portraying Santa has seen a substantial increase, particularly in the latter years, surpassing growth in sectors such as leisure and hospitality.
Okay, pretty simply, you can see how this is a very, very helpful description. It goes much further than, say, just this is a graph. This is a graph that shows Santa's wages. It does talk about the sources. It's a humorous representation. It gives a title, so it gives a very holistic description. If we go down further, that image of the Santa we were looking at. Does mention that shows an individual dressed as Santa Claus in a snowy setting, blah, 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 blah. Useful to know, but probably requires less description than this particular graph. And we can change the code to format this in different ways. We could highlight this in some garish orange or purple so that we know that this has replaced an image, and we could even maybe keep the image and put this text beside it as a clause. But I think we have proven out that this is a workable idea to run a set of code that will just replace everything in an article like this one, or perhaps this one. So I'm going to show you the code real quick here. Basically, it is all one async function. So, of course, API call, it might take a few seconds. It might take even longer than that. So you want to use an asynchronous function so you could keep browsing the web and do other things while it's waiting for a response. I have passed an element ID. I really didn't like this solution, but for proof of concept, it's fine. I think what we would probably do is replace all the images in a body section, so it would be a tag, not an element ID. But regardless, we identify a part of the web page we care about, and in this case, there was one called app, which is this whole article right here, and we didn't replace, the New York Times logo, for example. If the element doesn't exist, we'll just say it's not found. I don't think that's super important. Then we're going to search all of the images within that element, and for each of the images, we're going to make a response. We're going to make an API call to GPT-4 Vision, and very standard. Interesting. I didn't even have the prompt this time around. So I should probably include a prompt to give it more detail, and that was what we had earlier. So maybe if I just back up here. And copy this, and then go all the way back forward, we can have the best of both worlds. There. So we have a text telling it what to do, and then the image, and it should respond with a description suitable for audio listening. We max out the number of tokens, we get the response, we pull out the right content. You can see this is where ChatGPT tripped up. It gave us message, which includes a role and the content. We only care about the content, so it was tripping up. And then we are replacing the tag, the image tag, with a p tag, which is your standard text. I would suggest adding some classes or some identifier to say that this is, an image conversion or something to label it in the future, and potentially adding some styling so that it appears pink or purple or orange, so you can very clearly identify what you put, or rather what OpenAI injected into it. Just to watch this actually work out one more time, I'm going to look at Wikipedia, and this is not a great way of doing it, but we did need to find the ID, and you can see over here, very tiny words here, but the main section is, the ID is content. So in our case, we're going to not call it app, but content. content instead. And what we're going to do is copy the whole thing, come back here, go to our console, and paste and run. And so this promise is going to take a bit of time. It says that there was a bad request. So the icon I provided is of a star emoji and not an actual image. And then it errored out. So that's real disappointing. I think what I'm going to do is find another New York Times article instead, just to make sure that when we added that text, it didn't break anything. So we'll go into our console, going to paste the code. It's going to have a promise. It takes a bit of time to run through the API, and I'm expecting this to change. And so this image is a colorful bar chart titled "How Often Teens Say They Use Each Platform," blah, 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 blah. You have all the percentages broken out. Very helpful. Here there is another section. This image depicts a young person lying on their back on a hardwood floor. And I think those might be the only two. And so you can see that this will read through, and you're not going to miss the key graph that that the article is expecting you to see. Instead, you're going to hear it when you use something like read aloud. We might build this into a full application, but I love these kind of quick proof of concepts. I think this one will work, and I think I might build this out because I listen to a lot of these things, and having a bit of code to allow you to replace all the images in an article is going to be really helpful. The limitation I think really is problematic is many of the things I read are in PDF, and that's going to be a lot harder to deal with than a web page, because how are you going to identify the images? PDFs are all over the place in terms of formatting as well. But we'll see how this goes. I think I'm quite happy with how this turned out. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next week for another project. Bye.